Tommytoon Stories presents The Cryptilog, Episode 1, The Ape. Hello, curious minds. My name is Mr. Crypt, and this is the Cryptilog. I've spent many years with a curious mind about the occult and supernatural, and I've searched out these stories, but now I am cataloging these stories in this audio series. And today, I will be telling a story submitted well before I decided to begin recording these audio logs. This one stood out to me when I read it, as not only it's a non-typical tale of a well-known cryptid, it is one of the most interesting tales of Bigfoot I've ever seen. Hi, Mr. Crypt. I would like to preface this by saying what had happened occurred years ago when I was a kid. So as to say, I was not under any influence, and I'm of a somewhat stable mind nowadays. But I need to tell this story to someone who may believe me. I mean, who'd believe that a kid who went missing got taken by some creature people don't believe exists? Let me start from the beginning. Me and my mother were alone. Dad died a couple years back, so Mom didn't have much in terms of time for me. So, I spent a lot of time with my aunt. She and I would go on adventures together. Getting ice cream, movies, you know, typical stuff you would imagine. And one day, she decided we should have a picnic at a local park near the woods. And it was there where things would go horribly wrong. When I was picked up, my aunt was ecstatic, as it had been over a week since we'd seen each other. And I too shared that feeling, not knowing what was next when we began driving towards the park. The park, which will remain undisclosed, was a relatively small one, which gave a nice view of a river. It also had a playset, a boat ramp, and there was the outskirts of the forest nearby. Things were fine for a while. That is, until I decided to go check out a patch of trees while holding a sandwich. This patch of trees was part of the previously mentioned forest outskirts. Those Douglas firs were imposing to say the least, as at the time I was about 5 years old, still somewhat fresh to this world. Though, when I'd gotten close to the tree line, I could see something. It was just for a moment, but I saw a creature moving about in the brush. I froze in place as I felt this cold feeling of fear. That was when I saw the eyes, large black eyes, and soon I could somewhat make out a set of lips. It reminded me of a cartoon gorilla I'd seen in an old series I can't remember the name of. Looking at the creature, I had to look up. And at the time, I'd not known it, but the beast was on all fours, not typical of what you'd picture with Bigfoot. And I'd heard the name Bigfoot, but didn't fully understand what people were talking about, so I thought it was a lost gorilla or something. But as it looked at me, it began growling, and with a sudden motion, I was in its clutches. I don't remember what happened next, as I'm fairly certain I went into shock. But when I woke up, my face was covered in foul-smelling hair, and I could feel movement. Quickly, I'd realized I was being held over the shoulder of something. Something big, hairy, and it had a god-awful smell like a skunk. I also began to hear the sound of breathing, heavy breathing, from a big creature. That was when the true horror of my situation came to me in full. The thing I'd seen near the trees grabbed me, and now I'm slung over its shoulder. What could this thing want with me? Why was I still alive? There was this series of questions that ran through my head, and soon I heard the sound of branches cracking, and I decided to try and turn to see my surroundings. Nothing but wilderness, but I could faintly see we were going into some sort of nest, and I knew that I needed to act quickly. So grabbing a nearby long branch, I snapped it free, and hastily I tried jabbing it wherever I could reach. Unintentionally, I ended up jabbing it into the creature's butt. And I know that sounds like a joke, but it was the only thing I could think to do at that moment. Surprisingly, it worked, as I was let go and dropped to the ground. As I did, I scrambled to my feet to begin running. And it was then I'd see all the bones, many of which belonged to animals. Some of them belonged to humans. I ran for so long, I honestly had no idea where I was going. But I knew that getting as far away as possible was my best chance at surviving. Eventually, though, I grew tired and began resting against a tree. After all, you can only go so far, even with adrenaline and survival instincts coursing through you. And it was quickly becoming dark and cold. Shivering was setting in quickly, and even I knew at the time I wouldn't survive long exposure. But the trouble was just beginning, as I could hear something behind the tree I was leaning on. Something was coming, and fast. As much as I didn't want to believe it, I knew the beast was after me. So I ran, and as I did, I saw a glimpse of the creature. It was massive, covered in shaggy black fur, and it had a build similar to that of a chimpanzee, but was more in line with the size of a gorilla. But much, much taller. It was running on 2 legs this time, and was actively reaching out for me, trying to snatch at whatever it can to grab me. I managed to get some distance, until I realized it wasn't behind me. I stopped for a moment, to not only catch my breath, but also to survey the area. It was then I heard something flying through the air. A rock collided with my back, and I felt the wind get knocked from my lungs. My body was flung forward, and I felt no control of myself as I rolled down a large hill. I'd lose consciousness, and when I woke up next, I was in the hospital. Apparently, I'd rolled right onto the side of a road. Thankfully, someone saw me before the cold or the beast could get me. Apparently, I'd been gone for many hours, with me having been found at 10:30 p.m. Whether or not you or the curious minds of the Cryptilog believe me, know this. There are things in the woods, and they aren't friendly. They will kill you if you let them. And that's the last of it. My thought is simple. This is a very interesting story, to be certain, but of course hard to verify without the proper details. I did some digging, and apparently a kid on the Oregon coast had gone missing for a day, being found on the side of a road. There may be truth to this story after all, but it does make me wonder how many others have fallen victim. End of log. The Cryptilog is a horror fiction series written by and directed by Tommytoon Stories. Narration is provided by DreamRayz. Feel free to visit the description for social media links. See you next time for the next story.